Okay, so today we're going to take a moment and we are going to go over Mosdos press literature. I've gotten a lot of questions lately about flip throughs and things of that sort. If you follow me over there on my homeschool account at Into the Rabbit Hole with me on Instagram, I have a whole bunch of highlights of this in use, like daily lessons and things of that sort. So make sure you go over there. If you're new, hi, my name is Nancy and I'm a homeschool mom of two boys, a rising fourth grader and a rising sixth grader. So this one right here, Ruby, is for fourth grade. This curriculum starts at third grade. So there's three parts to the curriculum. So you're going to get the student textbook. That's this one. It's in color. It's really pretty. It has really wholesome stories. Everything is illustrated or uses real photography. Very pretty. So you have that. Then you also have your student workbook. So this is where you're going to have your vocabulary in there. You have graphic organizers, reading comprehension questions. Did I say vocabulary? Vocabulary, reading comprehension questions, graphic organizers, like all that stuff. And then you have your teacher's guide. Now the teacher's guide, I think, is where the problem lies, right? And I think that's where I get the most amount of questions because at first glance, it's overwhelming. It is. It's a big, thick book. And when you open it, it's all in black and white, you know? And so there's always like a lot of questions regarding this. So I'm gonna, let me just talk about what it is first. So Mosdos is a literature-based curriculum. So you're not going to have spelling, you aren't going to have grammar in here, and you're not going to have writing. This is just your literature portion. So you're going to be reading short stories, and it's going to have vocabulary and reading comprehension questions, some creative writing, you know, but nothing structured that tells you this is how you write, this is the format of a paragraph, the structure of a sentence. It's not going to have that. You have really adorable, wholesome stories, short stories, and then you're going to be doing your literature component for it. So you're going to be doing literature analysis. You're going to be going over literal and figurative language. You're going to be just going over foreshadowing, all the elements of a story, like that kind of stuff. So I think what most people find confusing is that there's no real clear scope and sequence to this. So when you open it up, you're kind of like, well, like how do I use it? So there's three main compartments to a lesson. Let me get to the beginning of one and I will show you. So for every lesson, it starts off with a lesson in literature and it looks like this. And this is the exact same page that your child's gonna be looking at, except theirs is beautifully illustrated and we get the black and white, but you get to see exactly like what they're seeing, which I really appreciate. And then everything else down here is just stuff for you. It's for you as a teacher to help facilitate the discussion. It gives you some background knowledge and context for the stories, maybe some information on the historical times, how to approach it, how to get the conversation started in your class, things of that sort. And then you'll also find like little images of the worksheets that you're supposed to do after you do it. And then you have some vocabulary over here with the definitions filled in for when they work on their vocabulary. Back to this. So this is the very first portion, what I call like step one. And I'm going to tell you how I do it, but I think that this is a very flexible curriculum in that you can really approach this however you want to approach it. You don't have to do it exactly how I'm doing it. You can really modify it to however it works for you. So this is a 3-day-a-week curriculum for us. Every now and then, sometimes 4, depending on an extra assignment that this may have that looks really interesting that we may want to do together, you know? So this lesson in literature is kind of like your soft opening. It's kind of introducing you into the topic that you're going to be doing for the rest of the week. So you're going into plot, but it's not just a general plot. It's going to kind of say something specific about the plot. So for the plot, we're really going to focus on the problem or conflict that occurs at the beginning of the story, and we're focusing on the beginning, middle, and end. So that is the focus for this particular lesson, and it's giving you the short story with this adorable dog, and it's kind of just introducing you to it. So the way I approach it is this is day 1 for us. So we read this together. You could have your child do this independently. Totally up to you. We do this together. So we read this together. So he follows along in his textbook where it is, and I follow along in here and I discuss it. We go over this together. We read the story. So when he's done with that, the very first thing that he's going to do is he's going to do the corresponding vocabulary work pages for this. So this is day 1. He's going to read this, and then he's going to do 2 vocabulary pages for it. What I mean vocabulary pages, and I just kind of moved it to a random one in here, but just enough for you guys to understand what I mean. There's always 2 vocabulary pages to this curriculum. Now, there are 3 or 4 lessons throughout that doesn't have any vocabulary at all. So these 2 pages would be missing. And it goes straight into the reading comprehension questions, which I'm going to get to here in a second. But for the most part, they're going to have 2 vocabulary pages. One is your typical plug in the vocabulary word into the missing space. And then this one over here, this activity number 2 for the vocabulary one, is going to be a little bit different, and it changes every single week. Sometimes you're doing synonym work, sometimes you're doing antonym work with the vocabulary, sometimes you're doing what's that called with the 2 dots, not anagrams, analogies. There you go. Analogies. Sometimes you're doing analogies with it. So there's a deeper level of thinking required for like the vocabulary. One is your typical plug-in. Another one's almost like a step up, like a bump up in analytical thinking with the vocabulary. Another thing to note is that starting in grade 4, you do get a little bit more of the cursive in there. So you may, if your child hasn't learned cursive, you may want to read this and do this with them. But the 3rd grade one, there is absolutely no cursive. And there's not a lot of cursive in here. Like you'll see on this page, there's no cursive. And let's just turn it to a random page. No cursive there. But every now and then there's a few pages, see like no cursive. But every now and then you'll encounter, see like nothing. You'll encounter something with cursive and you have it right there. So that's day 1. Day 1, we read the short story, takes us 5 minutes, we discuss it, and then I send him on his way to work on this independently. He does these 2 vocabulary pages, okay? So that is day 1. Then day 2, we get into the meat of the story. So day 2 now the short stories, I say short stories, but they can be a little bit lengthy, like 15, 20 minutes, sometimes like reading through the stories. And everything around here is just additional stuff that you can add to it. So I always get the question, do you do all the questions? Here, let me zoom in. Do you do all the questions that they have down there? No, I don't. I kind of pick and choose. So I will pre-read this the weekend before, highlight the questions I want to talk about, pull the big ideas that they want us to get from that. And as you continue reading the story, they'll always pull literary components off here to the side. So we'll cover that. They have analytical questions, they have literal questions down here. You can even turn this into a notebooking prompt. So if you want to incorporate a little bit more writing, you don't have to do this orally. You can write it into their notebook. But see, there's like foreshadowing, all these literary components in here, rhetorical questions, things that you may want to pull out. So I usually do all the ones up here, and then I will pick and choose some of the questions along the way. There are a lot of questions. So I think the big hiccup is, do you do all the questions? I personally don't. And I don't feel like we're missing out by not doing it all, you know? So anyway, this was a really lengthy story. You'll see that every page has questions and questions for every page that you read. So another page you're reading, more questions. So I just kind of pick a handful and we orally discuss it. But again, you can turn it into a written prompt if you want. So that's day 2. Day 2, all we do is read the story. That's it. Day 2, we read the story. Now, there's still some workbook pages in here, and you have your typical reading comprehension questions. And then there's always one question in here that has some sort of creative writing component. We usually don't do it, but if your child likes that, then you guys can always do that. And sometimes we don't do all the questions in here either. I pick like maybe 3 or 4 questions from here and I'll highlight it, and that's what he does. So he does is day 3 though. So day 2, all he does is read the main story. Day 3, there is no story to read because we've already done all the reading. So what does he do day 3? Day 3, he does these reading comprehension questions, but not all of them. I'll have like 3 highlighted, and we usually skip the creative writing part. And then there's always a fun graphic organizer for them to do, and then he'll do that too. So that's what he does day 3. Day 3, he's completing the fun graphic organizer and doing the reading comprehension questions. Okay, so let's recap really quick. Day 1, we're doing that soft opening, that lesson in literature that I showed you guys. in the very beginning, wherever that is, we do that reading. And then he does the 2 vocabulary pages. Day 2, we read the main story, which is going to take you 15-20 minutes. You guys are going to read it together. You can do it as a read aloud. He can read it to you. You can do joint reading, however you want to do it. That's the way I do it. Is I usually do it as a read aloud, and every now and then he'll like read to me. It just kind of depends on what we want to do. Maybe he'll read one page, then I'll read the next, and then he'll read the next, and then we just take turns, but that's all we do day 2. Day 3, there is no more reading to be done. So now what we're doing is we're finishing up the workbook pages, the reading comprehension questions, and then the fun anchor chart that goes along with it. And that's it. And that's our 3 days. Now, every now and then at the end of the story, there are some suggestions to further extend the lesson. So you'll see there's a creating and writing component. There are some questions that you can turn into notebooking prompts if you want to. And then there's usually a poem I forgot to mention. So after the main story, there's usually a poem, and we'll just quickly read that and discuss it. And there you go, and that's it. But every now and then over here on this side, I may want us to do something. Sometimes they have like a fun craft, like do this poster about this and this, or build a model of this and this. And so sometimes we'll do that, and that will be our day 4 if we decide to do that. And that's it. And that's how I approach it. So for us, it's a 3-day-a-week curriculum. I can see this totally being a 2-day-a-week curriculum. I can see this being a 5-day-a-week curriculum and further extending it even further out, And then let me just show you a quick flip through of the student books. You can see that what they see is beautiful. It's exactly what was in the teacher's guide, except without the extra prompts, And everything's in color. The pages are like the semi-glossy. They're nice and thick. They're not thin. Everything's in color. And then they have like the vocabulary right there highlighted as they read it. All the stories have been wholesome and adorable. We've really, really enjoyed it. This is our 2nd year doing this. We did it for the 3rd grade, and then we're about a quarter of the way through for the 4th grade one. So yeah, hopefully that answers some questions. I feel like I don't really see this curriculum a lot, and I feel like it deserves to be talked about some more. It is really nice. It's just short stories, so they're not going to ask you to read any novels or anything like that. This is just a short story. You don't have to purchase anything extra to go along with it. It's all self-contained in here. So let me know if you guys have any other questions. So remember, there's three portions. There's a textbook, there's a workbook, and then there's the teacher's guide. Okay, guys, have a great day.